3:20 this morning. My eyes pop open, and I say, in a prayer that I did not know was a prayer, I am not getting up at 3:20. And I rolled over, and what the Greeks used to call the fates descended upon me and said, "Oh yeah? You think you're in charge? Let us show you something, dear Ron." So I got in an hour and a half's worth of breath work because the fates were having their way with me. And I was laughing over here with Donna and Trish, wave your arms, because they said, "That's so refreshing because, there's a lot we don't have any control over." And I said, "That's exactly right," which is why breath work ultimately becomes so important, to tune into what is going on, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. First, I want to take you back to an experience I had. I'm laying on my acupuncturist table. I've got needles in my back. And I'm practicing what I call at that point in my work, my death and dying practice. Now, what I mean by that is I'm trying to use breath to move beyond this egoic material corporeal structure and to find out what's there. And it was the greatest depth I had achieved with breath work to that date. You could feel the layers of me being released with each breath. I was talking with Victoria Pendragon about this yesterday, who's going to do a presentation later today. She has a similar kind of practice, where with each layer, it was as if there was less of me present. Each breath taking me deeper, each exhalation releasing, surrendering perhaps, layer after layer after layer, and it got incredibly quiet. Very, very quiet. And I felt myself crossing into what I will label the emptiness, where I'm not there. And as I'm sinking into this, and my breath is getting shallower and shallower and shallower, a voice speaks in the darkness and says, "We should go for a steak to Outback tonight." Really? It's like, well, that's not a very spiritual thought. And all of a sudden, I take a detour in my breath work. And I have to do it again. I delayer myself. I breathe, I breathe, I breathe, I breathe, I breathe. And once again, I get to the threshold, and I'm getting ready to sink into the emptiness. And the voice somewhere back in there says, "Well, how about salmon at Copper River?" And I'm yanked back out, right? And again, I judge it for not being very spiritual. But I go once again, 7 times. 7 times I am sinking into the emptiness, and it yanks me back with plans for dinner. So I call my mentor, guy who's been working with me for 25 years, and he says, "Well, of course, Ron, your egoic structure is going to do everything it can to bring you back because it's not in the business of giving up its job." Exactly right. Every time I would seek into a transcendental egoic place, I would get over myself, as I like to say it. This ego that is built into me, because I'm still on planet Earth, would have its way with me, and it knows that I am particularly susceptible to dinner suggestions. Still working on that one. Which I have to share but it didn't keep me away from the cheesecake last night. Just want to go on the record. So that is an exercise in a deeper level of breath work than some of us think. A lot of people will talk to me about breath work and they will say, "Oh yeah, that's about learning how to breathe right." And what I'm here to talk about is this idea of breathing, releasing, and breaking through. And it's a complement to much of what you're learning. So here's the beginning point for that. Oh, and first I have to say big thank you to Julia and her team. When I was here last year beginning to talk about this, I had an experience a couple months after that where I was doing a workshop. I do a lot of workshops on breath work and forgiveness and healing and all that. And somebody comes up afterwards and they say, "Ron, where can I buy your CD set?" And I said to myself, well, hell, I need to develop a CD set because I don't have one. So I sent a note to Julia and team and said, "What do you think? Y'all want to do one of these?" And they go, "Oh yeah, why not? Sure, knock yourself out." And the result is the CD set's out, it's here, and I'm delighted by that. And Julia, thank you so much for experimenting with me. And it'll be out on iTunes for those of you who are podcasty any day now. So you can get it on MP3 files as well any day now. Okay, enough about that. Let me come back to breathwork. So the proposition in my title has something to do with heart and soul. Now, if I were to survey you and ask you, do you believe there is something more to you than meets the eye? Almost all of you would say yes. If I use the word heart, some of you would say, oh yeah, that's the real me. If I said soul, some of you would say, oh yeah, that's the true me. If I said higher self, some of you with a psychological orientation would go, oh yeah, that's my higher self. If I were to say the I of you, capital I, not the me, not the Ron, not the Bert, right? You would say, oh yeah, there's an I of me. If I were to say you're part of the collective unconscious, some of you would say, oh yeah, that's me. If I were to say that you were part of conscious humanity, which are, by Gurdjieff's account, those who are still present, but they're in a non-physical form, some of you would say, oh yeah, that's me. So the reason I frame this initially this way is because I have observed that we get very hung up on who's got the right framework. And we argue whether it's a soul or a collective unconscious or an incarnation or whatever. And it doesn't appear that the divine cares what we believe about it. It cares that we believe, but it doesn't seem to care what we believe, assuming it's a divine and not a universe with a capital U. Don't know. But we get very hung up on what the right language is, and so by opening it that way, I'm inviting you to use whatever language is comfortable for you. Because if I think that I've got your answer, I am in deep trouble, and so are you. So there's something about us that transcends this corporeal form. It transcends across lifetimes. Apparently it transcends across consciousness. When people start talking about I and thou are one, there's only a we, there's an us. One descriptor I had, which I really love, is imagine that all of creation is just one giant multifaceted crystal. There is no separation from the crystals, but each and every one of you and each and every one of these out here is a facet. And there's only one light emanating through the crystal. But how it comes through your facet is very different from how it comes out of my facet or a rock's facet. And what we do is we take up residence in our facet and we say, mine's the right facet. See, I'll tell you that tarot is the answer. Or I'll tell you that my spiritual practice is the answer. Or my mentor is the answer. Or this conference. Or we go down and down and down the list. Rather than being able to say to ourselves, oh, and in fact you all were just singing about this, Armand and Angelina. This idea that there's only one, and that somehow or another we are all expressions of that. So where I'm going to invite you to go with this breath work today, and we're going to practice a little bit in here, I'm going to invite you to go explore that space. The thing I'm going to ask you to do, and by the way, they're coming up to help with music because they do such a beautiful job. What I'm going to ask you to do is first to let go of all your preconceived notions about what you think is out there. As a good friend of mine says, open-mindedness is a great concept, but I can only go as far as my closed mind will permit me. And we all got a closed mind to some degree. So I'm going to ask you to let go of your ideas of what it is, and we're going to use the breath, and we're going to let you start exploring it. And we're going to have some nice background music. We're going to do this for just a few minutes. I would also like to encourage you, those of you who have something to write with and write on, please write to yourself, because the stuff that passes through us, unless you stop it and freeze frame it, it often gets away from us. We don't remember it, just like dreams vanish into the ether. And my hope is that something wonderful will come about for you this morning as we do this. So all you're going to do, I'm a real simplistic guy. Well, actually, I'm real complicated, but for these purposes, it's really simple. Pick any comfortable position. You can tell because when you close your eyes and begin to breathe, you'll feel something that needs adjusting. a shoulder. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, just soften your gaze. The Shambhalites, those Buddhists, think you should just soften your gaze and look 6 feet forward, cast downward. Whatever works for you. And as you feel the rising and falling of your breath, notice what needs adjusting in your body. Could be a hip is a little off and you need to shift. Could be that you realize you're carrying some tension in your jaw and you might have to move your mouth. Could be that you feel tension in your shoulders and you realize you're going to have to pull them back and down to release the tension. Just make adjustments as the breath rises and falls. If you feel yourself yawning, go ahead and do a good yawn. And just notice the breath rising and falling. Now, what I want you to do is with your breath, begin to explore your body, looking for a feeling anywhere at all. Any feeling. What I want you to do is identify where it is in the body. So, for example, you could say it's in the pit of my belly. And then describe it to yourself. Don't explain it. Don't say it's anxiety. Say, well, it's a fluttery feeling. So in the pit of the belly, a fluttering feeling or a tension in the neck. And just notice the way it feels. Draw your attention there and use your breath to begin to play with the feeling. In and out. Noticing the feeling. As the squirrels in your head begin to chatter, thank them. Bring your attention back to the feeling in the body and breathe with it. Notice what it feels like. Notice if it changes. It might move, it might soften, it might intensify. Follow it with your breath. As much as possible, bringing all your awareness to that feeling in the body and breathe with it. If it vanishes, scan your body for the next feeling in the body. Determine where it is, describe it to yourself, breathe with it. Let layer after layer go by identifying it in the feelings. And with each breath, become a little bit more present, a little less distracted, a little more aware of your body. In and out. Nice, gentle breaths. When the thoughts stir up, just let them pass like a cloud across the sky. And breathe with whatever feelings are there. In and out. In and out. And with this next breath, imagine yourself being open to anything at all. And as you lift your awareness upward, breathing, ask gently the question, what is here for me? What is here for me? And then breathe and listen to your body. Just listen. With each breath, listen for anything at all. And when you're ready, stretch a little bit before you open your eyes. Move anything that needs moving. And when you do open your eyes, please write to yourself about anything at all that you just experienced that you found useful. And Armin and Angelina will keep playing for a couple minutes while those of you who want to write. But just keep breathing. Steadily, gently. Let the breath have its way with you. Try not to judge anything that has arisen for you. Judgment's not helpful. But do get curious. And breathe. And notice what needs stretching or moving so that you're more present, more comfortable. One big deep breath. A nice long exhalation. And slowly bring yourself back to the moment. That was beautiful. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So why would I start this way? There are a couple of real important themes here. Two in particular I'm going to talk about, and there's a punchline in this that I really didn't realize I was going to talk about until I was having breakfast this morning, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. Actually, so let me say this. Bert and I were chatting. Bert, raise your hand so they know who you are. This is Bert. Bert and I go back a year or so. Bert and I were talking, and I shared the story of the manna in the desert. For those of you who have any Christian or Jewish orientation, you know manna fell from heaven each and every day, and it kept them alive. And the spiritual principle there is that each day is fresh and new, and we need new sustenance for the day. The sustenance for yesterday isn't good for today. It has to be renewed and refreshed. And so when I woke up this morning and battled the fates for an hour and a half with my breath, I was listening for guidance, and sure enough, guidance came to me up to and including just before we started the session this morning. Here's the deal. The ancient Tibetan Buddhists say that enlightenment, or, to Julia's point, transformation, does not occur in your thoughts. It occurs in the body, the somatic space. And some of those folks say that if the ancient Buddhists, who ended up bringing those bodies of practices, including in Hinduism and a whole bunch of precursors, Tao, you name it, if they had known how disembodied we in the West were, they would have brought their practices differently. Because the Western culture is very yang, if you want to use that framework, yang or yang. The East is very yin, very receptive, very open, or so we would say. And what happens is we in the West are deeply attached to our thinker. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because that's the nature of the soup we're swimming in all the time. And so we spend all our time in thought. Most of us spend even our spiritual or developmental or transformational practices in thought. Much of what you all have been doing, sitting in these seats from yesterday, has been thinking a lot about some really cool stuff. But what these ancient Tibetans would have said was that unless you find a space to let it happen in the body, big pieces of your thinking are in vain. Because yin and yang coexist. And we in our Western cultures have been divorced very much from the receptive side, the listening side, the observer state. So what happens in our culture is then, how many of you have a meditation practice you go somewhere for? Okay? How many of you do some kind of yoga? Tai Chi? Yeah, okay. All great practices. The problem is that when you're deeply steeped in a thinking Western culture, we use those as refuge rather than integration. People go to meditation to escape this, rather than figuring out how to bring that whole meditative practice, that whole Tai Chi attentiveness, that whole yogic breath work, to bring it into the day so that it eventually suffuses It permeates your day in, day out thinking reality. And magic of magic, we were given breath. The breath is an embodying mechanism. And as soon as you begin to bring attention to it and begin to pay attention to what it does in the body, you begin to bring about this integration. So let me tell you the funny story that my publicist says I should never tell. But I do, because it's a really great story. When I was first learning this 24 years ago, I talked to my mentor about it, because I said, man, I got squirrels in my head, and I can't meditate, and I can't do any of this stuff. So he said, and he's from Austin, Texas, and he's one of those kind of Texans. He says, well, Ron, how many times a day do you pee? I said, well, what kind of a question is that? And he said, Ron, just answer the question. How often do you go to the bathroom? I said, well, for Christ's sake, I don't know. I don't know. I don't count the number of times that I go to the bathroom. And he said, well, has it ever occurred to you that you could use that as your dedicated space? And I looked at him, I said, that is so sacrilegious. Imagine the urinal as holy ground. I mean, how ridiculous is that? The reason my publicist doesn't like me saying that is because she says it's offensive to some people. But if holy ground is not here and now, there is no holy ground or sacred space or present moment, if you like Eckhart Tolle. So if we can't bring the holy ground, the sacred space, the oneness, the presence, the all that is, the transformation to the present moment, we aren't realizing the potential that is there. So what the breath does when we begin to pay attention to the body, and you can talk to all kinds of interesting people about this. You can talk to shamans, and they'll talk about soul retrieval, which is a kind of re-embodiment, that you've lost part of yourself somewhere along the way. If you talk to the folks who do QHHT around here, for those of you who may listen to this who don't know what that is, it's a hypnotic regressive technique that's taught here. It's created by Dolores Cannon. And it's a way of reawakening you to what's going on in there. Hypnosis is a way of tapping in. Jungian analysis, dream analysis, past life regression work. All of it is trying to take us inside and find out what's going on in there, wherever there is. And again, we get hung up on what the right way is, and my good friend Sam in Texas would say, just pick one and use it, Ron. And so what the whole breathwork set is about, what this is about, is helping you find a way to tap into what's there, and more importantly, to integrate it into your whole life, all the time, all the while. Because as long as you're on planet Earth, you're going to be breathing. It's a fully portable practice. When you travel to China, you can use it in China. You can use it in the bathtub. You can use it when making love. You can use it when you're playing with the dog, but you have to learn to pay attention to it and use it. So let me show you real quickly, right? This is just an example. Right now, I just tuned in to these two folks right up here, and I'm breathing, and I get a feeling in my body right here. And I have no idea what the feeling means. It's a feeling. It's a very pleasant feeling, whatever I'm feeling. No idea. It's a feeling in the body. I am being affected by your presence in this room. And if I spend all my time thinking or talking to you and not listening to what is within me, I'm going to miss valuable information I didn't know I loved you to. It just happened right now because I listened to what was happening here. I think it's love. I don't know. It's a nice warm feeling, so thank you. Yeah, you too? Oh, you're getting it too. Oh, how about that? It's a reciprocal universe. Did you know that? We're bouncing off of each other all the time. We just don't know. You walk into a room and it's like, oh, there's somebody here waiting for me, but you got to be listening. So here's the background. You were born with a genetic download that includes the ability to perceive at the most subtle levels. You got it because people who don't get that don't live. And so every next iteration of babies brings with it the genetic heritage of people who've got a finely tuned listening system. And then somewhere around 18 months, 2 years, we start being taught to stop listening. And the thinker is a beautiful thing. I am not disrespecting our good thinkers. But when we don't find a way to incorporate the somatic space, that which is inside us, we're leaving valuable information behind. So what do I mean by valuable information? Well, let me tell you a story. This is fresh as of this morning. A guy named Chuck called me this morning, and Chuck has been having a very tough go of it. Chuck is a recovering person, alcohol and drugs. He recently got married, which is a miracle in itself. And he and I have been using breath work for a very long time. And here's what's happening. This is an illustration. Chuck was born to a teenage mother in Texas who had the wisdom to give him up because she couldn't take care of him. But he was born prematurely with some developmental defects, and so he was dropped into an incubator where he spent the first 6 months of his life. Unfortunately, the people in that place didn't understand the importance of touch, and so he was deprived of touch for the first 6 months of his life. And of course, mom was gone, so whatever it is that we feel about mom is not present, and you've evolved to know that that's a great loss. Call it trauma, call it grief, whatever. So Chuck got adopted into a really, really wonderful family who really wanted him. But the problem was that they were good people, but they didn't know that what was going on in him was there. And Chuck discovered alcohol, drugs, and prostitutes at 14, which became the story of his life until his life train wrecked. So the first day I had a chance to work with Chuck, I put my hand on his heart and I said, just breathe. I got feelings about this right now. I said, breathe, just breathe. And he's shaking and he's quaking because it hurts so bad. He's disappointed everybody, he's lost his career, he's ruined his life, and he's shaking. And all I'm doing is putting my hand on his chest saying, Chuck, just breathe, brother, just breathe. Just breathe with it. And it eventually passes. And so with breath, we begin the process of healing some childhood trauma. Let's just call it that, because there's that stuff out there. And then at some point in time, he says, Ron, I want a girlfriend. I said, okay, great. He says, well, there's a problem. What woman in her right mind would date a guy with my history? I said, well, you're going to have to use breath work on this, brother, because she's out there, you just have to find her. And he said, well, how do I find her? I said, well, a whole bunch of them are going to have to walk away from you when you start telling the truth. And it's going to really worry you because you're going to feel abandoned again. So you have to use the breath, you have to stay in the dialogue. And sure enough, one day he met her last spring, early in the spring. I stood up in his wedding, which is a really cool outcome. Except that what has happened is that his wife has begun to develop some mental health challenges and has now been hospitalized as of yesterday. And he's saying again, what do I do with this? And the answer is, let's breathe. You need to process this because we don't know how this is going to go. We don't know what you need to do. We just know you need to stay present and let it work itself out. And so this is one of the funny phrases that relates back to my opening faith story. My phrase for that is, we're going to let them do you. Let them do you. Let them work with you, whatever they are. Call them angels, call them spirits, just the breath allows him to stay present. And so the wrap-up of our conversation this morning was, he said, I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't know what the day holds, but I'm okay. That's right. Call me later. Let me know how this is going. So what I just walked you through was how he's been using breath work, everything from childhood trauma to present day personal experience with some difficult circumstances. And I'm mindful that we don't want to spend all our time in somber, so I'll do a little bit of humorous stuff with us in a minute too. But I mean, the world has somber in it, right? So Stephen Levine, the great teacher and practitioner, says that we need to attend to the sorrow in our lives. And breath does that. We stay present to what's going on. We stop running from it. And we get made better by it. The breath has an uncanny capacity for making things right, just by being present with it. Now, in the best of all worlds, let me just push the limits here. I shared in one of my opening stories about how it actually took me to the empty. Well, you can also use breath to regress yourself. Yes, that includes past life regression, if you believe in such things. You can begin to cross space with the breath by going deeper and deeper and deeper to tap into the collective unconscious. You can begin to see, and this is a funny story, you can begin to see some of the base programming that exists within you. The funny story here is I was walking, I did this for a while, I was traveling a lot for a while, I was in a lot of airports, and I would walk through airports and I would soften my gaze and breathe and walk down the corridor as hundreds of people are streaming by. Just soften my gaze. I want to pick up vibes and see what happens. The most amazing thing happened. My attention was always drawn to a smile. Always. Of course, a smile is the universal sign of welcome, right? Of course I would be wired to pick up on it. So here's the funny part. With the guys, it stopped there. With the women, my attention then shifted down the body to her breasts. Well, I've evolved. I'm a guy. I'm a heterosexual guy. I'm programmed to pick up on gender. I know, it's embarrassing. Yeah, but there you go. And it's happening very deep within my awareness. So you can use breath and awareness to begin to tune into this background programming you've all got and notice what's driving you. You can pick up psychological tendencies that you didn't know about. You can complement therapeutic work you may be doing. You can use it to supplement people who are doing QHHT with you. It goes with you everywhere because your breath is with you always. Nonstop, 24/7. Now here's the heretical part. The heretical part is that in the best of worlds, those of us who do this kind of work need to teach you how to do it for yourself. It's the downside to all of us who practice, because we start thinking, I'm going to tell you your future, or I'm going to explain your psychology to you, or I'm going to help you understand your tarot reading. And I realize this is offensive to some people because we love that stuff, and well, we should. It's a useful tool. But in the end, I don't want you to be dependent on a psychic to do your reading so you can navigate your life. That is a bad outcome. At worst, the psychic has mischief and they steer you awry. Secondary worst is you place too much faith in somebody and it runs you onto the rocks. Because you see, none of us can understand what's inside of you. We can use those as tools, but in the best of all worlds, I like the midwife. Anybody here a midwife? Anybody in midwifery? Yeah. The midwife, who really practices well, claims no credit for the creation, no credit for the birthing process, no credit for the mom, and no credit for the baby. The midwife catches the baby, wipes it off, and hands it to mama. It's a beautiful metaphor for what good practice is we want to help people learn how to do their own work, which is why I'm so committed to breath work, because you can take it with you everywhere. And I realize I've just disrespected some of you who practice in the ways you practice, and I get that. And let me tell you what happens. I'm just going to be really honest with you. The problem is that when you work with other people, you start thinking you're pretty important. So thanks for that song, Armand and Angelina, about not taking ourselves so importantly. You start thinking you're really important and you're responsible for people and they can't live their own lives. That's a bad outcome. Worse still, some people become dependent on somebody telling them how to live their own life, which takes me into my breakfast story. I had breakfast this morning with these three women right back here. Well, actually, two of you. You lost a sister. Two of them. Raise your hands. This is Amanda and I just met you on blanket. Christine, yeah. And their sister Jackie's around here somewhere. And we were at breakfast and we were talking about guy stuff. They were talking, actually, I didn't invite, I bombarded them with ideas is what happened. Because, yeah, that's what I do sometimes. And what came out of that as I was standing in the shower this morning is what we're really talking about is what I call self-determination. That you were born with the only inalienable right you have, and that is the right to find your own path. The only inalienable right we are given. And nobody can find it but you. Nobody. People can reflect back at you. We can certainly give you tools. We can facilitate. We can be a midwife to the birthing of your baby. We can do all kinds of things. But in the end, nobody can tell you experientially where your soul is going than you. And breathwork taps that. Little did you all know that we were doing self-determination work this morning. Because nobody can find your way but for you. And while we can use external guides, external circumstances, eventually what we need to do is translate them within you, which is what breath does, is it brings you home to yourself and allows you to use your breath and what's in there to find your way. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a breathwork exercise, which is my cue to Armand and Angelina to come back up here because we love beautiful music. And we're going to see where we can go with this. So get comfortable. Any place that is comfortable. And I want you to begin to breathe in any way that's comfortable. And again, you're probably going to notice that something needs adjusting. Or you're going to yawn or something. Just go right ahead. Get settled. And use your breath. Just start breathing. And what I want you to do is notice the breath rising and falling. If thoughts stir up, agitations, general swirly noise in your head, just let it pass. Thank you for sharing. Bring your attention back to your breath. Feel it rise and fall, rise and fall. And then I want you to call your attention to the area just above your heart. The locus of your being, some would call it. And notice how it feels. Is it soft? Is it fluttery? Is it palpitating? Do you feel edgy, comfortable, empty? How does it feel just above your heart? And now breathe into that feeling. Imagine your breath passing right through that feeling just above the heart. And imagine that space beginning to expand. With each breath, opening yourself up. The heart getting larger. More open than where you started. Notice how it feels and keep the breath in the feeling. It might get warmer. If you're visual, you might get a sensation of colors or light. Breathe them all into the area above your heart. Follow it. Let it do you. Let it have its way with you. And breathe with that feeling. Imagine elevation, that you're gaining elevation, opening, expanding, rising with each breath into the heart area. Notice how it feels. Notice what changes. This is the universe speaking to you, just to you, for you. Listen to that feeling and anything that rises with it. A memory, clarity, a word, a color. Just notice what rises with the breath through the heart area. And take a really deep breath to lift yourself even higher from where you've been, opening yourself up. Your shoulders may move back. Feel that breath moving through the area above your heart. And breathe with it. Let it teach you. And listen. Just listen now. Breathe and listen. What's here for me? What's here for me? And with a breath, deeply in, long and slow out. When you're ready, you can open your eyes as you adjust your body again. And if you have anything to write to yourself, please write it down. We'll have this lovely background music for another minute or so while you write, or sit with your feelings. And breathe. Just breathe. And with your next breath, come on back to here and now. You can open your eyes. Okay. Special thank you and applause, please, for Armand and Angelina. So now I'd like to chat with you all. No. They warned me about feedback. I'm going to stay on the stage and chat with you. Who has a question? We've got people with microphones. Please keep them short. I'm happy to hear what you're thinking about, either something about I said or something you experienced. We've got a hand right up here. Okay, please. Yep.
That's good? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
What about people that have medical problems with damaged lungs?
Yeah.
Is that something different, or?
No. It has no, I mean, it'll diminish the depth of your breath, obviously, but go right ahead and do it. Don't make yourself cough, right? Probably not helpful. I do have one person who used breath to see if they could help repair their lungs, and they reported that it was helpful.
Okay,
and so
they did notice some kind of...
Yeah,
Thank
they
you.
sure did. Sure enough. Yeah, I actually had someone who came in with a hip pain, and the hip pain went away. Yep, what's that, Travis?
I'll get this side, he'll get that
Oh,
side.
got it. Okay, who's got a question or an observation they'd like to share? I'm happy to entertain a few of them. We have a few minutes.
Be bashful.
Oh, here's one right over here. Thank you very much. Stand on up and tell us what you're thinking about.
Thank you. I just wondered your impression of like the yogis who stop their breath while in connection with the beloved.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to achieve that and thus far have failed, to be really honest, because clearly there's some evidence coming out of the yogic traditions in Southern Asia that people really do transcend material corporeal self. Breath can stop. They can do things that you and I don't even consider possible. And so I remain open-minded and curious about what is possible in terms of that. I'd love to be able to say I can do that, but I'd be lying to tell you. I can slow it down a lot, but eventually I have to take a gasp. I'm just not there. Yeah, somebody's hand back there. Yep, please, Travis.
What are your thoughts on breatharianism, where people just eat the air and they don't eat food or water?
I have reason to believe that that is true for some people. I don't know if it's possible that we could all go there, just like some of us have tried to be vegetarians and it just really doesn't work for us. And so it is something I would experiment with and see what works.
There's a lady on YouTube that apparently had a baby and the baby's never eaten. It's like a whole documentary. She raised this baby from in the womb to be a breatharian, and it's amazing, but
Yeah,
I don't know how to do it.
And let's be honest, one should be one should have a modicum of skepticism about
Discernment,
all things
I
on the
have it,
web.
I'm just saying.
I mean, here's my practice. I don't want to dismiss anything, but I also don't want to practice the kind of foolishness that I have some reason to believe I practice, believing in things that I really shouldn't be believing in because I just shouldn't. They're not going to work for me. What else? We got time for a couple more questions. And then, oh, there's one all the way back. Thank you, Travis.
I'm very grateful for the experience I just had, and it's happened to me twice since I've been here. Today, while you were speaking about thinking about the area above my heart, I believe the source came into that area and then the source moved away from me as I was breathing out and then came back, and I felt hands on either side of my face and a spoken word of love, and that the source would never ever leave. And I'm very thankful for this experience. I had it one time yesterday with a couple that put a heart next to my chest, and I had a very similar experience with the source. So I am so glad I'm here today.
Cool. Wonderful. And what I'm going to suggest to you is something one of my teachers, a woman in New Mexico, taught me. She says that once we have that feeling in the body, we can learn to navigate back to it, right? We now know how that feels, and it's a wonderful deal. So use that, use your breath, use your practices to keep trying to refine that space. I was doing some work with a woman yesterday who had come out of that a blue crystal light that felt like, quote, home, which is a powerful notion. And so what I've learned to do is to respect those things that rise in people. I think we've got time for one more question. Right back over here, please. I'm sorry we don't, yes, that would be you. Sorry we don't have more time, but.
Well, yours sounded really interesting, and I'm really impressed with what you were able to feel. Mine was a little more of a vision. My left foot, the big toe, was pulsating the first time.
Oh, yeah?
And then the second time, with the area of the heart, I saw a baby foot, and it was the left foot. But now I don't know how to interpret that. I see visions, so what's the next step?
I love the stuff that comes up. Thank you. It's like, well, I mean, come on, we have no idea what's percolating around in there. What I would do with that is what you can do, and by the way, I'm channeling some of the stuff that's in the CD material to teach you how to do this, but this is a great question. What you can do, I promise you, is go find a quiet place anytime today, bring that vision back up. It will produce a feeling in the body. Use the breath with the feeling and let it unfold for you. Is that wherever you stop at any point in time, you can resume it by going right back to that space, either by remembering the thought or the vision or the color or the feeling in the body, and resume your breath work there, and you can begin to follow it from that point forward. Yeah, I mean, it's never lost to us. You all know that, right? Those of you who are big on Akashic records and what we're learning about brain neurology. I mean, it's never lost. It's all there somewhere. We just have to tune into it. That's a great example. A big toe. I'm going to be playing with that all day long. Yeah. I have a toe that hurts now, so sympathetic toe hurt. So here's what I'd like to do. I did not know I was going to do this until I was listening to a couple of folks over here, and then in our conversation, and then listening to Armand and Angelina. I'd like to do a laughter meditation with you. Yeah, this is what I call the horse's ass meditation, because you feel like a horse's ass. Because it's like, it feels really stupid. It really does, but it's like really, really good, because laughter is a form of breath. It's a different form of breath. It's invigorating, it brings oxygen into the system, it's just plain fun. And the way we do this is I start laughing, and you all say to yourselves, that is really stupid, Ron. But then you start laughing, and we force it until it starts to flow, and we stay with it until it's done. And you guys are probably going to have to turn my mic off because this is like going to blast you off your charts. Ready? Someone's cackling over here. That's you, Trish. You're hurting. I'm flushed. So breathe. Just breathe. Breathe. I hate that meditation because I feel so foolish. But it's cathartic. And it becomes real. Bert's still hurting, laughing. I heard years ago that the Buddha, before he would do his meditation work, would sit beneath the Bodhi tree and he would laugh at himself for his foolishness. And for a number of years, it is the practice I used in the morning because I'm way too serious about way too much. And laughing at myself and with myself has proven to be an incredibly healing practice, no matter how forced it becomes. Those tears that were coming there at the end as I was laughing, those were real tears. I don't know where they come from. I don't know what they mean, but I know that what I feel right now is priceless. And it was right on the other side of a stupid laughter meditation. What a magnificent thing that you can have that with you all the while, everywhere you go, nonstop, 24/7, a perfectly designed diagnostic and healing mechanism that is with you always. So if that's not enough of an encouragement for you to practice, I'm not sure what else I can tell you. But I am happy to chat with any of you anywhere along the way here, and you have been great fun in playing along with me, so thank you very much.